Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the Puck Bunker. We're your co-hosts, Rocco Zappia and Darren Boyce, and we're really excited to get this project started. Before we get going into it, I want to give you a little bit of background about us, what we want to do, and what we hope to kind of achieve here. We're both hockey fans at the end of the day who spend, honestly, an obscene amount of time discussing and arguing and debating and just talking about the game. So we figured we might as well at least share our opinions with the world, and maybe sometimes we'll be right, and most of the time we probably won't. And our goal here is to be entertaining and hopefully a little bit informative as well. The program is going to focus primarily on the NHL draft, and that's what we want to cover. And we're going to cover the top up and coming prospects from not just this year's draft class, but from years that have gone past that are getting set to make their debuts in the NHL and make an impact in the league. So we hope to bring some coverage to a lot of kids who work really, really hard and deserve a few minutes in whatever spotlight we can provide and the chance to showcase their skills. And so people know about these players coming into the draft. 20 years after the salary cap's been put into the league, people are finally starting to figure out just how important the draft is. And I think there's a lot more interest in this topic than there has been in years past. So hopefully we can add to that, and we can provide some good takes and some bad takes, and ultimately just put a lot of focus on really, really hardworking kids who deserve to have their hockey skills showcased. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. And our first topic on this show is actually going to be goaltending. We're going to cover different things. In addition to the draft, we are going to touch on current topics going on in the hockey world and give our 2 cents on those. And lately, goaltending has been a big thing that's been talked about in the league. There's been a few really big signings and a couple benchmark signings, and there's going to be a couple more coming up in the next couple of years. And the goalie market really has shifted. Darren played goalie for a really long time. It's something that he pays really close attention to, especially with the guys in the league and the guys up and coming. So we'll start there. And Darren, I'll let you run through it. This is something you wanted to talk about. So floor is all yours.
Well, it does look like the league is, I guess, shifting away from the previous thought process that we can go cheap on goaltending. 3 guys have signed for over $8 million in the last week and a half. All of them probably deservedly so. So that's Jeremy Swayman, Linus Ullmark, and Jake Ottinger, which Ottinger's actually signed today. And I think all those are pretty realistic contracts.
And they all 3 of them on 8.25.
Yeah. But Ullmark's on a 4-year deal, which I actually find to be a really good deal for Ottawa, yet he's already hurt. And as soon as he's hurt, Ottawa's struggling. What a shocker.
Yeah, we've seen that act before the last few years when the team's not gotten quality goaltending. The team hasn't had quality goaltending really since Craig Anderson's been between the pipes for them, which has been some time now. But that is the two-sided, the kind of double-edged sword with goaltending. You can't win without it. And the top guys, they've been overlooked salary-wise, aside from your Price and your Bobrovsky, really. Most guys have been overlooked salary-wise, and setting that new benchmark. Swayman, it was a big deal how long he held out to get that 8.25, and we saw 2 goalies who are by most accounts, in that same tier. They signed the same thing, so he did accomplish what he wanted. He set that benchmark. But goaltending it's a fickle world, right? So much depends on health and the play in front of you. And honestly, puck luck can go into it a lot. And there's very few guys who can anchor a team for 55, 60 games anymore. And the guys that can are paramount. But, and as a goalie, your opinions may be pretty important on this. Like, how do you justify the balance between wanting to have top tier goaltending and the fact that the position can be so inconsistent year to year?
It's tough, but I think we've seen the last couple of years that you can win with a goalie making a lot of money, and they are important. They're going to start every game for you in the playoffs. So, the rationale I've heard is some people, they don't start every game in the regular season, which I guess is true, but you also you're not going to be flipping goalies throughout your playoff. Like, who's starting and who's going to put in a good effort. So, I mean, so a good example is going to be Shesterkin here, I guess, next year. He wants over 11 million. And if he has a good year, in my opinion, he's probably going to get more than that because other teams will pay him that. He's one of the best in the world. If he has a good year, he will probably then be stated as the best in the world. And, what does Bobrovsky make? 10?
Yeah,
and
10
he makes close to 10 or made close to 10, 9.5, something like that. So, I mean, the cap's going up. It's, if the Rangers have any hope of, winning a cup, they probably would have him starting every game. And they would, they don't want to deal with, having to go back and forth on goaltending. But then again, you see other teams like Colorado haven't done that. They've invested, lower amount, lower years, lower amounts on lower tier goaltending. They won a cup that way, but you kind of see what the struggle is. The Leafs, I guess, are another example of that too. I mean, they have Anthony Stolar is playing really well right now, but is he going to be starting for them? Come playoff time, is that going to?
It's game 4 of the regular season.
Exactly. Like, you don't know. He could play really well for 60 games here, and it means nothing to them because
I don't think anything in Toronto matters for the first 82 games. Honestly.
Well, it's the same with Edmonton too. Like, there's those two teams means nothing for them.
Well, at least. But Darren, Edmonton's gotten to Game 7 of the Cup Finals, where it's a little different in terms of the accomplishments that those two teams.
Got to win something, though. It doesn't matter. They didn't win.
Yes, that's fine, but they've done a lot more damage here than Toronto has over the last few years. That's not even close.
The point is that it doesn't it's irrelevant what happens in the regular season to either of those teams. So, like, the Leafs, for instance, look like they should be 4-0 right now. Doesn't really matter. Edmonton looked like they could be 0-4. Doesn't really matter unless they don't make the playoffs. Like, it's just getting there and performing when it matters. And I would argue that having top tier goaltending especially when you make the playoffs, is vitally important. But it's not as deemed as important for the regular season, I guess, is kind of where the league's gone that way. But I mean, again, let's just look at the Sens when they get, like, a good example, Ottawa Senators, when they get good goaltending, they look like a much better team. A lot of teams, when they get good goaltending, look like a good team. When the goalies don't make
it changes how guys
mentality.
Changes how guys play in front of you. When you know that if you have a breakdown here and there, that you're gonna get a save now and then to bail you out. And I think it allows you to play a lot more free and a lot more confident when you're not worried about every shot ending up in the back of the net.
It's hard to play that way. And the other thing is too, when a goalie's playing well, like, everyone will get more confident. So, I mean, you're not afraid to give up chances, but then you actually stop giving up chances because you're actually playing. The system works. He's going to make a save. Like, we can make plays and score. Like, it's.
So let's get our first long-term prediction here on the show. The first official long-term prediction that is certainly probably going to make us look dumb as nails in about 9 months, but call it right now. What do you think Shesterkin gets, A, as a contract if he re-signs with the Rangers, and B, what's he get if he goes to unrestricted free agency?
So I think with the Rangers, if he signs, they have to really be careful because they have a pretty deep team and they're going to have to sign some guys coming forward. So they probably want it to be under 12. I mean, they already offered him 11,
which he turned down.
Supposedly, which he turned down. So, I mean, if they come to a deal before the season ends, it's probably something like 11.75, something like that. If he goes to market, I mean, he can probably make 12.5, 13 if he wants. I mean, think about when Carey Price.
Could he get $13 million a year on the open market?
But think about when Carey Price first signed his $10 million deal. I think it was like the third or fourth highest contract in the league. I think at the time when he signed it. I mean, there's precedent for that. Now, mind you, he'd won a lot of, I think the year before he might have won the Hart Trophy or something. Like, he had a great year right before that anyway. Or the Vezina anyway. He had a really good year right before that. So, I mean, if Shesterkin has a really good year, that's certainly possible. And I mean, there's teams with cap that would want to sign him. we've gone through this before. You have a team like Detroit that has a bunch of money come off the books, and they have reasonable contracts they can unload, and they have no goaltending.
No, and he's a guy that can steal a series for you.
Yeah, like, well, but that's the point, right? Like, when you get to the playoffs, the margins are smaller. So, I mean, if you don't give up any crappy goals from your goalies, you have a much more,
makes a big difference. Okay, so Boyce is calling 11.75 by 8 years from the Rangers. I'm going to say he gets 12 times 8 years from the Rangers, $96 million. And you know what? I think he could get 12 and a half, 13 on the open market as well on a 7-year deal. Let's switch gears here a little bit, and let's talk about some rookies who have some who we knew were going to make the league already this year, and some who were a little bit of a surprise. And there's been a couple guys who have started the year really, really strong. Logan Stankoven in Dallas, he's got 5 points through his first 4 games. Lane Hutson's got 4 points through his first 4 games. Matvei Michkov, 3 points through his first game. Celebrini had 2 points in his first game. One guy that is maybe a bit of a surprise, because those 4 guys, I think, were 4 of, along maybe with Dustin Wolf, guys who are maybe expected to come in and make that kind of impact. Now, we'll see if those 4 guys can all maintain a point a game over the whole season. I doubt it. It's their first year in the league, and we'll see after the 60-game mark if they hit the rookie wall or not. But one guy who's really surprised that I'd like to mention quickly, because I think he deserves that, is Seamus Casey with the New Jersey Devils, who has burst onto the scene with 3 goals and an assist through his first 6 games. And he's really gotten an opportunity there because of the injury to Luke Hughes. And, man, he's taken it and absolutely ran with it.
He's playing on the power play, and he looks like an NHL player. So, I mean, that's a kid who's gotten an opportunity to play, and he's running with it. I mean, that's they should be a decent team. So that's, found money for them because they've needed some defensive help.
Oh, certainly. And they got a guy, in the second round, same draft class as Lane Hutson. I mean, they played on the same team on that U.S. program, and they both went in the second round that year. And maybe some teams are regretting overlooking the undersized defenseman from that draft class, and honestly, that U.S. team particularly.
Well, you said it though. He's undersized, right? So I mean, It's good right now, but again, we'll see as the season goes on. Usually, the issue with the smaller defensemen is they get kind of injury prone, and as the game gets a little bit harder as the year goes on, they aren't as effective. So that's
teams will get a book on you too. Like teams will learn his tendencies. But he does deserve mention because he's had a hell of a start to the season and his NHL career.
I also don't think New Jersey's really going to try and feature him as a 1 or 2, right? Especially when they're fully healthy. So he's probably going to be in a pretty good situation where he can stick and be pretty successful. I mean, they might.
Yeah, it helps when you're playing with them a ton of pressure.
They might need to find maybe a couple more defensive-minded guys because they do have some pretty offensive-minded guys. So Casey's look fine in that regard, but that might be something they might need to look at come trade deadline if they're in the hunt, right?
Nope, fair enough. And one guy that you wanted to speak on, and we're going to feature him because this is a guy that, unfortunately he did just get injured, but it's someone that maybe wasn't expected to make the team out of camp, and he had a really, really good camp and a very good preseason. And that's Samuel Honzek of the Calgary Flames. So I'm going to cue up a video here of him, and Boyce, I'll let you speak about him and what you saw in the preseason to make you want to feature him today.
Well, even in the preseason, even the first 4 games of the season, he's looked like an NHL player. But anyway, he's a 6'4", 190-pound left winger, left shot, late 2004 birthday. I mean, he is a first-round pick of the Flames, 16th overall, and they actually I believe they put Jacob Pelche on waivers to keep him. So, I mean, that's kind of a big deal. They put a former first-round pick on waivers so they could, keep him on the roster. I mean, they thought so highly of him after the preseason. He was playing on the first line. By all accounts, he had a really good summer. I mean, he's a big body. He's in, again, he's in really good shape. So they're happy to have him there. So again, he has pretty good skill for his size. Really good body control. You can see in some of the two, he can handle tough passes. I mean, that's something you have to do at the NHL level. He'll battle down low. Those are all things teams are definitely looking for from their young players. He's got above average skating for his size, pretty good edges, really good reach, and his vision. He has the ability to use he can find passing lanes. He's the ability to use a stick for tip in, stuff like that. The issue with him was, more looking at his defensive side of the play. What will that be like? From the first 4 games in NHL, he looked fairly responsible. I mean, he wasn't blowing the zone or anything like that. He's for the most part, filling the position he's supposed to be in. But obviously, as you just said, another issue that he is having is injuries. So last year he only played 33 games with the Vancouver Giants in the regular season for 31 points. So I mean, that's tough on his development, and I mean, it's happened again. Now this year he's played 4 games and he's now gotten hurt again. He's going to be out for a couple weeks. So I mean, I like the player. I think Calgary is going to be happy to, definitely develop him. I'm not sure if he's a top line, first line forward for them, but I think he certainly fits in their lineup long term. Maybe he's a second or third line guy, and he can develop a little bit. I'd like to see his shot maybe get a little bit better. I mean, he had some shooting opportunities in these games, and they're I wouldn't say he's getting a ton of wood on his shots. So I mean, you'd like to see maybe him work on that. And that should come because he'll if he doesn't get hurt anymore, should likely get stronger. So I don't know if you've seen any of him, Rocco, but I do like the player, and I think the Flames should be happy to have him.
Yeah, I think they made a really solid pick there with him because he's a guy that he had a lot of projectable tools, I think, in his draft year, but he just needed to clean up some of the details of his game and show a little more commitment to maybe not more commitment, but just a little more consistency in his effort level. And the fact that he came out and really made sure to make a name for himself at camp this year and find a place on the roster, I think the things that the team would have had him work on over the last few years, obviously he's listened to and he's implemented those because he did look like he had an extra element of intensity that maybe wasn't always there in junior. So good on him because look, these guys are 17, 18 years old when they get drafted, right? They're not going to be the same person or player at 19, 20 or 22 or 24, right? We have to really, really, really hammer that point home that they're 17-year-old kids. And not one of them has a perfect game at that age. So they all have things to work on, and those are his things. And it's all a matter of how you receive that message. And if you say, oh, whatever, screw this, I'm the man, I was a first round pick, and you don't go work on it, and you see that happen to guys. But you see a guy like this, and he worked on those things, and he made the team out of camp. And when not a ton of guys from his draft class have made it yet. So kudos to Hondick, and it's unfortunate that he got hurt again because that was one of his things. But he had been playing well for sure in the preseason and looked decent to start the year as well. So hopefully he comes back and maybe he can stick for the year. But someone that notice.
Even if he goes to the AHL, which he can, I mean, it's not the end of the world for him. I'm sure they would like to develop him into a more offensive position anyway. So I don't think it's horrible for his development. But I mean, they also shows that they're very comfortable to have him in the lineup. So I mean, if they do bring him down, he's not going to be down there for long. They'll give him an opportunity to work on something and bring him right back up. And they're going to play their young players too. I mean, they have a bunch of young guys in their team. They're going to play them. So
yeah, they have openings and they have opportunities, and they're looking for guys to step up and take jobs because the jobs are there to be taken. So and you see how they've come out of the gate, like they're going hard because the guys know, like, hey, I've got a wide open depth chart here for the most part in front of me, and not a lot of young players can say that with their organization. So the young guys in Calgary are stepping up and trying to make a name for themselves. And to your point about sending them down, there's never been a guy in the history of the world who's been overdeveloped or over simmered at the lower levels. There's been plenty of guys who got pushing the league far too fast and their development set off track. So you're right. If he has to go down after his injury or to work on some things throughout the year, that'll only serve him really in the long run. So we'll switch topics now. We'll get on to basically what's going to be the vast majority of our coverage here this year, which is going to be the focus on the 2025 NHL draft, which we're really, really excited to cover. So we're going to feature three prospects here, and we're going to feature a few different guys each episode, and we're going to have these full length episodes where we do accompanying game tape and really break down shifts and game video and that sort of thing. And then we're going to do some quick hit episodes that might be more 10, 15 minutes. Maybe after we go see a guy live, we'll hop on a call and just kind of chat about it more informally. So that's kind of going to be a couple of formats that we use. But for now, we're going to stick with the video analysis and one guy. And you don't always get lucky where you get to see a guy the very first game that you scout of the season that you really like. But the very first game that I saw this year was the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies at the Gatineau Olympique. And I got to see a player by the name of Bill Zonnon, who I have absolutely really become a big fan of his game already, even early in the year. So I've got a video here that I'm going to play for you and talk over that. So checking in from the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies, the native of Montreal, Quebec. He's listed at 6'2" and 190 pounds. He's played both center and wing this season for the Huskies. We're still pretty early in the season here, but this guy's already become one of my absolute favorites from this year's draft class. And I haven't seen a ton of hype around him just yet, although he is starting to get mentioned more and more, a little bit in honorable mentions and closer to the first round. But I do feel like he's going to get a little bit more hype as the season goes on. He did turn 18 already in the early part of October, so he's going to be one of the older, more mature players available this year with a late 06 birthday, but I'm not going to hold that against him too much. He's coming off a 58-point season in 68 games last year, and he started off this season pretty well with 3 goals and 10 points through his first 9 games played at the time of this recording. What immediately stood out to me with this player is how hard he plays the game, so much that it took me about one period for me to start calling him Wild Bill. He's absolutely relentless all over the ice, and I don't think there's a single puck that he doesn't sincerely believe that he can't win. And that's something that I absolutely love to see from players. He brings a true power forward style and mentality to the game, and he has the tools and skill to go with it. He lives in the dirty areas of the ice, in front of the net, along the boards, and behind the goal line. And he initiates contacts and battles hard in those areas, and he's really tough to beat there too. I feel like he's a little bit raw in terms of the details of his games, but his physical traits in terms of skating, shooting, and puck skills all look very good in terms of his projections as a pro. He's got a pretty dangerous shot when he gets a chance to unload it, and I think that's one area of the game that we're going to see some improvement over last season. I think he had 18 goals or 19 goals last season, and I think we're going to see a little bit higher number than that this year. Pretty good playmaker, not the most creative all time. He's not Patrick Kane, but he is a very good playmaker, and he does a pretty good job of identifying open teammates, and he does deliver very nice, crisp, hard passes, which I like to see. He makes passes with intention, which not every player does. More importantly than identifying his teammates is his decision making is when it's time to pass versus when it's time to shoot, and he does a really good job of that. Although I do think he is more of a pass first player on a first look. He can certainly read the play well with the puck on his stick, although his skill set, I think it lends itself to a bit more simpler north-south style of play, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. His skating's coming along pretty well, especially for a bit of a bigger guy. And if he finds just another half step with his quickness, I think that's going to become a pretty dangerous element for him. His physical play is exactly what you'd hope to see from a guy of that size, and he really thrives in the physical aspect of the game, and he can absolutely finish a hit with authority. He seems to really enjoy engaging in that sense, and that's something that I really wish a lot more players with his skill level were able or willing to do in this day and age. He's played some pretty significant minutes at center ice this season, and I think he's looked pretty good in that role so far, although I do have some questions about whether he projects as a center or a winger at the NHL level, but that's quite a whiles away from now. The effort level on the defensive side of the puck is definitely there, and he's shown some pretty impressive anticipation on plays a few times for me, and he's done a nice job of creating turnovers for his teammates that have led to some pretty big chances and goals. His play in front of the net has been especially impressive, and I think that's one thing that specifically that might open up a lot of opportunities for him at the NHL level. In terms of areas of improvement, I really don't have a ton of negatives to mention for this player so far. I think the biggest thing for him will be picking his spots a little bit better. He's not going to be able to go that hard all the time, every game of his career. And sometimes his aggressiveness can take him a little bit out of position. That said, the kid's a friggin' absolute wild man out there. And I'd much rather have to try to rein in a guy like that a little bit than have to do the opposite and try to convince someone to go compete as hard as he does. So it's kind of a nice problem to have in that sense, if you even want to consider it a problem. I think this is very, very much a kid who knows what his abilities are, and he knows what's going to make him successful at the next level. And I think he's very much someone who is going to maximize whatever potential that he has in him. You could tell the work ethics there, and those kind of kids, whatever ability that they're born with, that they have, their body will allow them to extract. He's going to work his ass off, and he's going to get every ounce of it. For me, and I've seen multiple games of his already, he's a first-round pick this year and almost any year. And I think he could climb, I think he could be considered a pretty slam dunk first rounder here by the second half of the season, once people take a little more notice of him. And if he keeps up the scoring pace and playing as hard as he has, I think we're looking at a future top 6 power forward who's a guy that every team is going to want to have and nobody's going to want to play against. So, and I don't know if there's a bigger compliment that you can have that no one wants to play against you. And if for whatever reason he doesn't hit that top 6 ceiling offensively, I do still feel like there's a lot of safety here in terms of very high floor due to his size, his skating, and his willingness to run over everything in sight and cause havoc all over the ice. I'll take a team full of guys like this any day of the week, and I would have the most unfun team to ever play against. I think that would win a lot of hockey games. I'm a really big fan of this guy and the way that he plays the game. So that's Bill Zonnon for you.
All right. So
maybe I left that up. I maybe had some notes there. So boys, moving forward, let me know if I run over the video, and I'll
that's fine. That's fine. You're right on time. I mean, I viewed him. I've had one viewing of him as well. I'd say most of what you said, I agree with. I mean, he's definitely a very high floor player. I mean, his physicality and his compete are probably his best 2 assets, which a lot of teams are really going to be interested in. He's also 6'2", and he's already 190 pounds. So, I mean, these teams are going to project him to be what, 205, something like that?
Yeah, probably play between 200 and 210.
Yeah, so that's exactly what they're going to want. You can really pencil that into a third line there and be very happy with that.
At worst.
And then, at worst. And, that might be just my own thinking. At maybe I'm a little more pessimistic on some of this stuff than you are in general.
I'd say pretty often we have.
But I'm, thinking from that level, I feel like this would be a very safe pick for a team to make. And especially later in the first round, there'd be a lot of competing teams looking for a player like this. So to me, I do agree with you. I think he would be a first rounder because you're going to have contenders of those picks in those spots. And I think this is a guy that has skills to, they wouldn't need him to be a top line forward for him, I guess is what I'm saying. And then the other thing is so I would say I wasn't as impressed with his playmaking as you were. He was a bit inconsistent with his decision making that way. But again, even when he makes mistakes, he's kind of willing to, use his motor and that, to make up for it. Whereas, we've seen some other prospects, that maybe aren't doing that. So, I mean, that's the thing. And guys like this, you can call him, I think you even call them, raw a little bit, in some of his skill set. Teams will think they can improve him in, certain areas. So that would be, there is potential here to be a top 6 forward if he's put with the right line mates. I mean, if you have a play driving center, even that might be, and he's on the wing, I think that might be, a very effective combination because he can go get the puck. and that would be a very good combination for them.
Yeah, no, I forgot to put my little microphone on here. We got these nice wireless microphones. I forgot to turn mine on, but that's okay. But I agree with you there. I think that he's a guy that I think he's going to be able to play with better players. He's going to be able to play with more skilled players and go in and fit with maybe two more offensive guys, and at the same time play on your PK, come down to the third line when it's needed, go out and maybe play some harder minutes, but while still having the skills to chip in offensively. And I know you said maybe you're not as high in his playmaking, but the plays that he makes, he makes all his points that I've seen are very translatable. There's and I think people may, and I do see why people may question what his offensive upside ends up being because of that. But at the same time, you look at a guy like Zach Hyman or Brady Tkachuk or Wayne Simmons or one of these guys that just becomes a complete prick to play against and puts up between 60 and 80 points like clockwork, but nothing fancy ever. Nothing ever fancy. All your points are coming, all your goals are coming within 10 feet of the net, and all of your assists are very usually very, very simple straight line passes, right? So, and these are the kind of points that he's scoring. So I feel like he's the kind of guy who, he's obviously putting up points in junior, and there's offense there, but I feel like his points are going to translate maybe at a higher clip than a guy who is a little bit of a buzzsaw running around the ice in junior that doesn't work in the NHL as much.
Well, he looks like, the game I saw, he scored a goal right in front of the net. That's the fact that he's doing that already in junior kind of bodes well, because some guys you have to teach that. Some guys don't have that. They play perimeter hockey. He doesn't play perimeter hockey, I guess, is what I would say to him. And that, to me, that would mean he's probably going to move up the draft board, because teams will be interested in that type of player, where there might be another player, maybe they have higher upside per se, but there's a lot more danger maybe in him. That player has to play top six and wouldn't have the floor that he would have.
That's exactly it. So, and especially as you get outside of the guys who appear to be your first line players, which are usually top 10 picks, once you get past that point, if you have a guy that your confidence can be at worst a 15 goal 40 point third line guy who could be a lot more than that and play with your better players, and is willing to stand in front of the net and has the hands to bang home loose pucks, which Zonnon has already shown that he has in junior. That's a really, really valuable player, and the way his compete level and his physicality and the way that he plays in that sense is such a dying breed. It's rare. Those guys are rare, and teams hold on to them unless you're the Maple Leafs and you let Hyman go for no reason. But most teams with brains hang on to those guys, right? So I don't know. For me, that kind of thing is what tells me that I like him as a first rounder, even though I haven't seen every guy that's a first rounder this year. I've seen Zonnon enough times, and I've seen enough drafts that if barring major injury where he misses a whole bunch of time and you're not sure because of that, if he plays a full season and he slips to pick 33 or later, someone made a mistake.
Yeah.
So we're going to switch gears and take it to send the floor back to Darren here, and we're going to queue up a guy who we both noticed who was very effective at the Ivan Halinka tournament in August, and that's Radim Mrtka out of Czechia, not the Czech Republic anymore, out of Czechia. And he's a big right hand defenseman. And Darren, I'll leave it to you here.
All right, so you introduced him there. So Radim Mrtka, so he's a 6'6", 200-pound defenseman. So right-hand shot, so right there, a lot of NHL teams, they've already perked up because he's a right-hand shot. He's a June 2007 birthday, so he's fairly young for the draft class, and he's actually currently playing pro in Czechia. So he's playing for HC. My language is going to be bad here. Oslary Trinek. Now, unfortunately, he's not playing a lot for them. But again, you have to remember he is a 17-year-old playing with men. So this is, while he is playing not a lot of minutes, it's still pretty productive for him. So I'll go through the things that I liked about him. So positives, makes pretty good pinch decisions, especially, he usually makes sure he has support. And this has proven to be the case both, when he was at the Holinka and within the pros. So, I mean, that's a good sign right there that he's, when is pinching, he's doing it at the right time. He's good at simple plays and simple passes. And he's also willing to rim and get pucks out of the zone, when he's under pressure. Amongst his peers, so at the Holinka, he did have a very noticeable defensive presence. He was in good position constantly. He basically in both on the rush and in the zone, and he shut down a lot of Canada's forwards who, I mean, in my opinion, would have a much deeper lineup than the Czechs did, especially with a lot of top end forwards. And some of Canada's forwards were actually visibly avoiding him. So I mean that is noteworthy. Um, has a very strong active stick, and he breaks up a lot of plays with it. So I mean he's 6'6". So maybe a good example. Again, I'm not comparing the player, but maybe a historic player like a guy like Hal Gill, who's a massive guy, had a massive stick, and his stick just is in the way all the time. You do notice that with him. And looks strong physically when he's playing amongst his peers. So at the Holinka, he looked physically imposing. Now that's not translating as much to the pros yet. I mean, he is getting out muscled a little bit when he's playing, amongst professionals. But again, he's 17. So you'd think maybe at 2021 that might not be happening anymore, especially when he, starts to get stronger. He's not terrible at breaking out of the zone, but he's not great at it. He's more looking to defer to his partner, and he's looking for a simple play. As soon as that first play option is gone, though, there tends to be, I guess, maybe not panic, but he doesn't tend to make the right decision. He's a decent skater for his size. Still struggles a bit when he's again playing pros, so he will need to improve his skating. His edge work's okay too. I mean, he's 6'6", so the fact that he's not a bad skater is a good thing, and that should get better. Some negatives. I mean, in my opinion, I think his offensive hockey sense is really low. I don't know if you can really expect him to produce much offensively. I think he lacks vision to create, offensive zone chances. Even when he's jumping into the rush, he's not really good at finding lanes, to present himself to his teammates. He kind of just goes into traffic for the sake of going into traffic. He does play the power play, or he did play the power play in the Holinka for Czechia. In my opinion, it kind of slows down the power play, telegraphs his passes, and was making slower decisions. So, I mean, I don't think he would translate to a power play guy in the pros. And again, I don't think he has that great of a shot either. At least not one that's going to be, a threat to NHL goaltenders. And even when he does shoot the puck, he's, maybe a development for him might be looking for tips and just getting pucks through. And I don't think he's kind of gotten there yet. Now, in terms of the player, though, what we project him to be, this is going to be a guy, that you're looking at 5 years down the road. What's this guy going to be like? I can see why teams will like this player. Again, he's a massive defenseman. Big guys and big teams usually do pretty well in playoff formats. This is the type of player they would be looking for. Right-hand shot defensemen are very hard to find. And he's already been pretty good amongst his peers. So right now, I would say he's probably a mid-first round pick for teams. That could change, though, if he, say he makes a World Junior team and has a good tournament. And by good tournament for him wouldn't be putting up a bunch of points. It would be shutting down opponents that were, we would classify as better than Czechia. So he has some really good games, maybe against the Americans or the Canadians. That could really influence his draft position. But again, I don't know about the offensive upside here. I think you're looking at more of a, maybe an insulator for an offensive defenseman, or a defenseman's going to play, maybe the tough minutes on your PK, stuff like that. Maybe, more of a 4-5 defenseman. But again, I would say his floor is fairly high. I think you can get a player here. I just don't know how much upside you would have.
And that's, I think, a very, very fair assessment of his game. I think you highlighted his strengths and weaknesses quite well there. And I'm going to echo a lot of your thoughts in terms of production, because I don't know either that there's much offensive upside here. And I do see this player who I see him as a player who would be an excellent fit to play with your team's best defenseman or second best or most offensively minded guy. And he can be the responsible guy on that pair, but still have the puck skills to be able to move the puck and make that first pass. But primarily there to be a shutdown guy and to make life, like you said, some of Canada's best players were avoiding him in that game once they got a taste of him in the first period, right? The rest of the game, his side of the ice was a little more vacant than it had been to start the game. And that's a really, really big compliment for a defenseman, where you have the other team's best player just completely shying away from you, or at least being very aware that you're out there. And I think if he can take that role and embrace it and not worry about being an offensive threat, which I not that he's worried about it, but if he can just kind of take that role and run with it, he could be a hell of a player as a shutdown guy. And you look at teams that win Stanley Cups year after year, 6'3", 6'4", 6'6", 6'5", like their defensemen are big, and the guys who aren't big are their best puck movers, right? They're best play pushers, play drivers, I guess. So he there's a place for him on any NHL depth chart, just given his size, his handedness, the fact that he can skate well for a big guy. There's a lot of projectable attributes there that make him a very, very safe pick. But again, to get inside that top 10 most years, you're going to have to show a little bit of offense, which I don't know that I've seen from this player yet either. So I think we have pretty similar takes on the guy, but he was very impressive. Make no mistake, he was very, very impressive at that Hlinka tournament, and guys knew when he was on the ice. So Radim Mrtka is our first defenseman feature. Now we've got one more guy that we're going to feature here before we call episode 1 a finished product, and that's going to be Michael Misa of the Saginaw Spirit, the Memorial Cup champion Saginaw Spirit, which Darren, if anyone doesn't know, Darren Boyce from London, Ontario, big Knights fan. So he was a little disappointed that they didn't win the Memorial Cup last year. But hey, Mikey Misa from the Saginaw Spirit, Memorial Cup champions.
They were a good team, Rocco. They're a good team.
Hey, they were a hell of a team. Now you let me know, chime in if I talk for too long here, because that's been known to happen in my life.
Go ahead.
So the 6'1", 185-pound center, the exceptional Michael Misa, Oakville, Ontario native, coming off a 29-goal, 75-point D-1 season for Saginaw. He's been shot out of an absolute rocket launcher to start the season, and he's got 11 goals and 14 points through just 7 games at the time of this recording. The jump he's taken from last season to this season has been pretty remarkable and extremely noticeable. He's absolutely dominated his opposition when he's been on the ice this year. Misa is one of the most offensively explosive players that you're going to see this season, and he has the rare ability to make something out of absolutely nothing anytime he touches the puck. His skating ability is very high-end, bordering on elite in terms of both his top speed, his quickness, and his agility. I guess all 3 traits. He can burn you on a straightaway to beat out an icing, or he can split the D up the middle on a stretch pass, or he can dangle around you with his footwork and then quickly turn it back up ice with his quickness. He's quite simply a lot of fun to watch when he has the puck on his stick, unless you're a fan of whoever he's playing against. And despite the fact that he's got quite a few more goals than assists to start the season, don't let that fool you into believing that he's a one-dimensional goal scorer, because he can absolutely dish the biscuit with the best of them. He's very creative offensively, and he has the ability to direct and move defenders where he wants them to go in order to open up passing lanes. That's a pretty rare trait, especially for a junior player. He sees the play a step ahead
in the offensive end of the rink. And maybe Michael Misa is a better name for him once he crosses that offensive blue line. And when you combine all of that with the absolutely blistering shot that he has, we are looking at one of the premier offensive players from this 2025 draft class. I mean, if he really gets a hold of one, it's in the back of the net, period, at least in this league. And his release is so lethal, he could pick you off from a rooftop. This guy's absolute nightmare fuel for goalies, and I don't think that opposing coaches like him much either. I don't want to make it sound like he's the perfect prospect, because there's always areas of the game for these young kids to work on. And his defensive game isn't terrible, but it's not necessarily a strong suit for him yet either. He knows his job is to produce offense, and you can sometimes see that in his defensive zone play, as he can be looking for a break up the ice rather than battling with his D to help turn the puck his way sometimes. Now, physically, he uses his body to shield the puck and ward off defenders offensively very well, but defensively, you can tell that he's just not as strong as other guys yet down low, as some of the bigger players, and you rarely see him out muscling a guy too often in the corner. Now, that said, he's playing well over 20 minutes a night as a 17-year-old forward, so these are not uncommon criticisms for a player who's offensively as gifted as he is. I don't see any of this as a red flag here with him, because his effort level for the most part across the ice is pretty steady, and the details of his game will come in time. Overall, it's a guy I really enjoy watching. The talent's obvious, and he's been absolute dynamite to start this year. I don't think we're going to expect to see him put up a goal and a half or 2 goals per game for 68 regular season games, but he's going to pile up points all season long, make no mistake. And barring injury, expect to see his name near the very top of draft lists by the time the draft rolls around in June. And for me right now, I have him inside of my top 3. And I think we're looking at a top 3 pick here, and at worst a top 5. Could he push Hagens in that discussion for first overall? I don't know, but I think compared to some years past, there's a lot more room. That door's a little more open than it maybe usually is. So it's nice that there's maybe at least something to talk about in that regard. But God, I can't say enough good things about the way he's played this year. I mean, you can see just from the clips here, we're only not even halfway through the second period, and this game in particular this was one of his more dominant games of the season. But God, it was every shift he was doing something. And Boyce, I know you'd like to chime in on him, so I'll let you take it over from here and add your thoughts on Michael Misa.
So what stuck out to me is we saw him play last year, both of us, and I saw him live a couple times, and he was really good as a 16-year-old. Like, he was a very good player. Now, they had a very deep team, and I think he was asked to be in a different role, which he was pretty successful in. But this year he's come back and he looks like a superstar. I mean, his skating, he has D on the back foot a lot of the time. And you don't see that all the time, even in junior. But I mean, he gets the puck, even if he's by his own blue line, the other team's worried about it. So that's something to definitely take note of. And even compared to last year, it looks far improved to what he was. He moves around well. I mean, he shoots the puck pretty well. I don't know if he's going to be, a 50 goal scorer, but I mean, he can shoot the puck and score. I'm sure he could get 30 plus goals in the NHL. I don't think that would be too unreasonable. I mean, his puck skills are good. He does everything at speed. His playmaking's fantastic now. I mean, he on the rush, going full speed, finding guys through seams. I mean, he set up so many chances, especially in this Erie game here. First period and a half, I think he didn't make a mistake. I think he created a bunch of chances for his team everywhere on the ice. I mean, it was really, really good to see. Defensively, I actually don't think he's that bad at all, because yes, they're asking him to create offense, so he's not, per se the first man back in his zone. But he's really good in the neutral zone. I mean, he's got good awareness. He picks off pucks in the neutral zone and goes right back into transition. He did that numerous times in this Erie game. So, I mean, there's definitely, I think at the NHL level, they'll probably tell him you can't just float the zone every time. And he'll probably be fine. I don't really see this, the defensive side really being too much of an issue for him at the next level. Couple things I would more, with him that I would be more worried about. I mean, physicality, he's not going to be hitting guys. I mean, he kind of avoids scrums. It's not really what he wants to get engaged with. I mean, he'll battle on the boards. He looks fairly strong in his skates. So, I mean, that's good to see. And I'm not sure he's a centerman or not. I mean, from what I've seen, he struggled a bit with faceoffs. So, I mean, we'd like to see that
can be learned. That's a thing that can be learned, though.
It can be learned, and we'll see. But I mean, maybe it's, depending on who drafts him, he might stay on the wing versus center. And maybe that, possibly could impact how a team views him as a top 5 pick, specifically, if they're choosing between a couple of guys. But I mean, if you look at the development curve on him, I mean, he's gotten this much better in 4 months.
Yeah.
That to me would be very interesting as an NHL team.
Well, he's taken a huge step from last year to this year. Like it's very noticeable.
Like if you're seeing development curves like this, especially from, he's still really young. So I think maybe he suffered too from just being around too long. Like people have known his name too long that he's, people were thinking maybe he wasn't a top 5 pick, which maybe I was included in that. This guy looks like he could be a superstar.
I agree. He's got it all offensively for sure. And I agree with your assessment of defensive game because he reads the play very well and he is a turnover machine in the neutral zone. And again, it's not like he doesn't have the effort level. That's what I said. Like it's not a red flag on defense. He's a kid who's better than everybody in junior and he's focused on going one way and that's fine. But the effort level is there in the other areas of the ice. I don't think it's going to be an issue for him either.
I'd have to go back and watch some of the games from last year, but I don't think last year he was floating the zone as much, in the defensive zone and the role he was playing. Like, I mean, I don't think that was, I remember when they would play London, like those are very tight games. They weren't really a lot of mistakes. Well, so, I mean, I think he can do it. And I think it wouldn't be the worry I would have versus some other players we've seen. I mean, I would have more defensive worries with a few other guys we've seen, versus him. I could see him being more than, I mean, if he's going to be, let's say if he's going to be a 90-100 point player, if he's adequate defensively.
Yeah, that's enough.
That's enough. And I think he could be better than that. Now he's not big either. He's not a huge guy, but
he's 6'1". He's not small.
Yeah, I mean, he's big enough. So I think
he's big enough. Yeah. But I've been a huge fan. I mean, I wasn't sure that he was going to necessarily be in the top 5 either. But I mean, one or two games he jumped back into my top 5 and my top 3 pretty quick. He's been so much fun to watch. He's absolutely dominated every time I've watched him.
It'll be interesting to track him because, in my opinion, he should be on the World Junior team. I mean, I think he's probably been the best player in the OHL.
Yeah.
At least up to now. I mean, there's some other guys that are having good years, like, Mortone's having a good year. I mean, yeah, but this is the best player. Like, I think he's the best.
I agree. He's been the best player that I've seen so far in the OHL for sure. Anyways, although Martone's been pretty darn good too. I know you haven't looked at him quite as much, but we'll get there in one of the next upcoming episodes. He'll be one of our features for sure. So we're coming up on an hour now, and I'd like to call it there for our first episode. I think we got through some really interesting prospects, and hopefully anyone that did happen to tune in or that is watching, I know it's the first episode, might not be anyone yet, but let us know, please, because we don't know what this program is going to become yet. We're not set in stone with anything. The only thing that we know is that we love scouting. We love paying attention to the draft. We love making predictions about it. We love following hockey. We love the game. We play the game. We play it our whole lives. Not well, but we do. And any discussion is welcome. We're not too big to hear when we're wrong. And we'll make sure to let you know when we were right too. So if there's guys that you'd like to see us feature, or if you have ideas for what you'd like to see, please drop us a line. And we're really excited, and we hope you guys find this mostly entertaining and a little bit informative. And we'll hope you stick along and join us in the Puck Bunker.
Look forward to our next episode.
All right. Thanks very much, Darren. And we'll talk to everybody soon.